Have you ever felt just completely swamped, either at a job or even just with schoolwork? Well, that feeling is a really big deal. Today, we're going to dive into one of the absolute core topics for AQA psychology, workplace stress. And we're going to zero in on two key factors, workload and control, to get you totally prepped for any exam question that comes your way. Let's get right into it.
So, what's really at the heart of workplace stress? Is it the literal mountain of work piling up on your desk? Or is it that sinking feeling that you have absolutely no say in how or when you do it? That right there is the central question we're going to unpack, and believe me, the psychological research has some pretty fascinating answers.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick off with the essential AO1 stuff, the key definitions. Then we'll dig into the classic evidence. From there, we'll level up to some top-tier AO2 application and those all-important synoptic links, before we wrap it all up with a full AO3 evaluation designed to help you absolutely smash a 16-mark essay.
All right, let's get started. Section 1, workload versus control. This is your core AO1 knowledge, the stuff you just have to know.
So everything really boils down to these two concepts. First, you've got workload. That's pretty much what you think it is, how much work you have, how fast you have to do it, and how hard it is. But the real game changer, the idea that turns this whole topic on its head, is control. This is all about autonomy, how much power you have to make decisions about your own work. You've got to have these definitions locked down because they're the bedrock for everything that follows. Okay, so we have these two separate ideas, but how do they actually fit together? Well, for that, we need to turn to the most influential theory in this entire area, Karasek's demand control model.
In this table right here visualizes the whole thing perfectly. Karasek's big idea was that having high demands or a big workload isn't necessarily the problem. The real toxic combination, the danger zone, is that top left box, jobs that have high demand combined with low control. He called these high-strain jobs, and he argued they are the most damaging to our physical and mental health. Think of a call center worker. They have endless calls coming in and a rigid script to follow. That's the textbook example.
Now, a great theory needs great evidence to back it up, right? This next section covers the two key studies you absolutely must know for the exam. We'll go over the AO1 details, what they did and what they found, but we'll also weave in some crucial AO3 evaluation as we go.
First up, we've got the Whitehall 2 study, led by a researcher named Marmot. And this thing was huge, and I mean seriously huge. They studied over 7,000 British civil servants over many years, tracking how their specific jobs affected their health.
And this chart shows their most important and honestly pretty surprising finding. After all that time, they found it wasn't having a massive workload that predicted who would develop heart disease. Nope. The single biggest factor was having low control. The employees in jobs where they felt powerless and had little say were significantly more likely to have serious heart problems. A real bombshell finding.
Okay, exam hats on. Time for some AO3. Whenever you talk about Whitehall, you need to evaluate it, and a great way to do that is using GRAVE. The G stands for generalizability. I mean, think about it. This study only looked at office workers in the British civil service. Can we really apply these findings to, say, a plumber or a freelance artist or a factory worker? It's a really valid criticism and a fantastic evaluation point to use in an essay.
All right, let's move on to our second key study. We're going from the white-collar world of Whitehall to a completely different setting, a Swedish sawmill. This was a brilliant naturalistic study by Johansson and his team. So what they did was compare two different groups of workers there. You had the finishers, who had the classic high-strain job. A machine set their pace, it was relentless, they had a ton of responsibility, but basically zero control over their work. And they were compared to the cleaners, who had a low-strain job. They could pretty much work at their own pace and had way more autonomy.
And the results were just so clear. The finishers, the high-strain group, had much higher levels of stress hormones like adrenaline in their bodies. They also reported more stress-related illnesses and were absent from work more often. Now here's the key takeaway. This gives us objective, biological proof that a high-demand, low-control job leads to a real physiological stress response. And here's another great AO3 point for you. Because it was a real-world setting, the study has fantastic ecological validity.
Okay, so you've got the core knowledge for AO1, and you've started building some AO3 evaluation points. Now let's talk about how to really push for those top marks in AO2. This is all about applying what you know and making those clever synoptic links to other topics you've studied.
So to show an examiner you really understand this, you need to use concrete examples.
Take teaching. It's a job with huge demands, right? But studies often find that a teacher's stress level depends more on how much control they have over their own classroom and curriculum. And as we said, call centers are just the perfect modern example of a high-strain job that fits Karasek's model to a T. Using examples like this shows you can apply the theory.
Now for the really cool bit, the synoptic links. The best one you can make is to the biological response to stress. This isn't just about feeling stressed, it's a physical process. The combination of high demand and low control acts as a chronic stressor. This means your SAM and HPA pathways are firing all the time, flooding your body with adrenaline and cortisol. And over the long term, that can damage your heart and blood vessels, which is exactly what Marmot found in the Whitehall study. See how it all links up?
But hold on, it can't just be about the job itself, can it? People are different. And that's another brilliant synoptic link you can make. Individual differences. A person with a type A personality might find having low control incredibly frustrating, which would ramp up their stress response. But someone with a hardy personality might actually see their high demands as a positive challenge. This shows the examiner you're thinking in a much more sophisticated, nuanced way.
Okay, we're on the home stretch. It's time to pull everything together for a really powerful AO3 evaluation. Seriously, think of this as the perfect template for the conclusion of a 16 marker that will really impress whoever is marking your paper. First things first, let's round up all the good points. What are the biggest strengths of this whole workload and control explanation?
Well, for starters, it has really strong research support. You got the huge Whitehall study and the real-world Sawmill study backing it up. It also has really clear practical applications. I mean, companies can use this knowledge to redesign jobs, give employees more autonomy, and genuinely improve their health. And finally, it does a beautiful job of connecting what happens in our environment, our jobs, with what happens inside our bodies.
But, and you know there's always a but in psychology, it's not a perfect explanation. For a truly balanced evaluation, we have to look at the limitations too.
Okay, the biggest weakness is that most of this evidence is correlational. We can't be 100% sure that low control causes illness. Maybe people who are already unwell tend to end up in jobs with less control. It's a chicken and egg problem. You could also argue the model's a bit reductionist. It focuses so much on workload and control that it ignores other huge workplace stressors, like a toxic boss, bullying, or the fear of losing your job. And as we've already said, it does kind of downplay the massive role that our own personalities and coping styles play.
So, that brings us to the perfect synthesis, the kind of sophisticated concluding sentence that ties it all together. You could say something like this. The workload and control model gives us the basic structural foundation for understanding workplace stress. But it's our individual differences that ultimately determine the magnitude of our reaction to that stress.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The research seems pretty clear that giving people more control at work is a good thing for their health. But in our super complex, always connected 21st century world of work, is just giving people more control really the simple fix for everything? It's a really interesting question to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.